Good evening and welcome back to our Choose Your Own Adventure reading experience with our mission to Venus with Doctor Who, Peri, and you. Last time we read there were strange blue lights and some dead crew members, and actually one of those crew members' bodies has gone missing, and we are trying to meet up with the ship Medusa to get them some lichen, these strange otherworldly plants that we aren't real sure if they're food or exactly what they're doing with them. And we had some choices to make. And we are going to draw our fate again tonight. So, are we going to end up going with the lieutenant, with some of the crew, or stick with the doctor? And what does this say? We're going to stick with the Doctor and Peri. So, let's see what happens. Something about the doctor's attitude arrested your attention. He was too quiet, too introspective. He knew more than he was admitting to, or if he didn't know, then embryo suspicions were forming in his mind. He was the man to stay with, apart from which, though he was your mentor, you had a certain protective attitude towards him. Brilliant he was, and certainly beyond your comprehension, but there were times when his mind went off on tangents, while reality pursued its remorseless straight line onwards. At such times he resembled little more than a bumbling idiot. That was when you had to say, the dividing line between genius and idiocy is a very fine one. You knew on which side he stood, but how many others did? Peri nodded in the doctor's direction. He's gone away again, hasn't he? Yes, you said. I wonder where. No doubt we'll find out in the fullness of time. Provided that isn't too far away. I don't like this at all. She gave you a cool look. You think I do? The doctor's head was cocked to one side, and he was nodding to himself. Something was coming through, but you knew better than to ask what it was. As Peri had said, time would reveal all. Aaron calling, sir, the radio operator said. Bergen switched on his extension. Come in, Aaron. Commander Bergen here. Hello, Commander. Wingfield here. Good to hear from you. How's your progress? We're on full boost and tracking you, but there is one problem. Bergen's expression was ironic. Only one? It's quite serious, old man. I don't know if you're aware of it, but your course keeps varying. Holding to you is proving difficult. We are aware of it. We're quite unable to keep anything steady. I suspect we've got some stowaways on board, though why they're causing all this trouble I can't imagine. I wouldn't be too sure about stowaways, the doctor said, emerging from his thoughts. You all looked at him in surprise. What else could it be? Bergen demanded. I think you've been invaded. Invaded? In heaven's name, by what? This ship is completely sealed, isn't it? There's no other way of traveling through space. So how could anyone possibly get in? I'm not sure yet, the doctor answered. But that's my theory, and we don't have to think in terms of normal life forms. I've encountered plenty of others, which would not fit that concept. He shook his head. No, I'm fairly sure you've been invaded. By what remains to be seen. Bergen surveyed him for a moment, then turned back to the console. Did you hear that, Aaron? We did. It sounds a bit far-fetched to me. Me too, but on the other hand, there has to be a cause. Yes, but it could be mechanical, after all. The voice broke off. Then there was a scream of the most dreadful agony, garbled and meaningless sounds, a pause, then that strange cooing sound you'd heard before. Then silence. months. "Come in, Aaron," Bergen said. "Come in, please. Are you all right?" All that could be heard was static. "She's switched off, sir," the operator said. "Very well. Keep trying to raise her." He turned to the doctor. "I take it you have a theory for this as well?" "Oh, yes," the doctor said. "Now we've both been invaded." "And I repeat, by what?" The doctor shook his head. "A theory is one thing. A guess is another. If you'll forgive me, I'd rather not guess." Tedder had re-entered, as had most of the crew. "No trace of the body, sir, I'm afraid." "Very well, mister." He eyed the dials, gauges, and computer readings on the console. "Keep trying to get the pressure steady in the hold. If one of those jars breaks, we'll have more trouble than we can cope with. And you," he said to the helmsman, "do the best you can to hold us on some sort of course." "I'm not having much luck, sir." "Then find some." Now he turned to Peri. "Would you like to do something useful, young lady?" "Sure." "Go into the gallery and make us all some coffee, would you? We could all use some." "Okay, where's the galley?" She didn't like being ordered about, but it was an excuse to explore. He pointed. "Through that door, third entry on the port side." Peri hesitated. "Which side is port?" Finally he smiled. "To your left, facing forward. You will be going forward, all right?" Peri nodded and left. Immediately, Berrigan rounded on a junior officer. "Lieutenant Jackson, I'd like you to go aft and see if you can keep us on course with the emergency steering." "Aye, aye, sir," the officer made to leave. By now you were beginning to feel somewhat spare. A lot was going on, and your contribution came to nil, so you volunteered to go with him. Berrigan nodded his assent, and you set off with Jackson. Along the corridors you went, and through the leech-in hold to the emergency steering cabin. You could not help but notice that the plants swayed towards you as you passed them. Jackson put his hand on the lever of the door and paused. "In view of all that's happened, we'll go carefully, shall we?" You agreed wholeheartedly. Jackson raised the lever and gently eased the door open. You both looked in. All seemed well. Nothing stirred. Nothing appeared to be out of place. "Looks good enough," Jackson said, "but we'll take care just the same." He cautiously entered. You followed. Peri, meanwhile, had located the galley. It was gleamingly clean, sparkling with chrome and stainless steel working surfaces. The crockery, all made of some kind of clear material, was carefully racked up against the possibility of a jolt to the ship. Everything was secure and shipshape. There was nothing in sight to be criticized. Obviously, Commander Berrigan ran a tight ship. The vat of boiling water was secured to the bulkhead above a sink. Sundry buttons indicated the varieties of tea, coffee, and chocolate available. Another one beside them was for releasing cups singly. Trays were racked beside them. Peri extracted one and began buttoning out the cups while mulling over your circumstances. They were strange indeed, and she wondered how the doctor had come to make the TARDIS materialize in a spaceship of all things. Sometimes she doubted his ability. It was not that there was any question of his brilliance, far from it, but he could be erratic in his judgment. Really, some of the situations in which he landed you all left a lot to be desired. Peace of mind was in short supply, for a start. And look where you were now, in outer space with everything about you going mad. Sometimes the doctor was tough to take. Then there was the question of you. Oh, she had to admit that she liked you well enough, but you too had a tendency to dismount on both sides of the fence and ride off in all directions. Impetuous was the word she would find to describe you. There was this tendency for you not only to go along with the doctor, but even to jump onto some of his more extreme ideas and aid and abet them. A likable character you had, in her opinion, but also certain flaws which one day could prove fatal. Why, for instance, did you keep drifting off into reveries at critical moments? In that respect, you were as bad as the doctor. And why did you hurl yourself into things so? Whence this enthusiasm? Heavens, she loved life. There was no denying that, but since such was the case, she went to considerable lengths to hang on to it. Whereas you... Ah well, for at least you were as good a companion as she could hope for, given the circumstances. And dear me, she had her own faults, not least a love for the doctor. There she was, she decided, and all she could do was face up to everything, as did you and the doctor. So she did, and continued buttoning out the cups. But a sound from above her head froze her. She looked up. The bands securing the vat of boiling water to the bulkhead were slowly springing free. The vat was directly above her. If it fell and tipped its contents over her, all 50 liters of it, her future was assured. There wouldn't be one. She stared in horror as another bolt sprang free. And now we wait to see what happens to Peri. And we're going to actually play a game of chance. So, for our vote today, or this evening, to decide where we read at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning, you need to pick a number between 0 and 15. Put that number in the comments, and based upon the numbers that we get in the comments for our votes, that will determine where we read tomorrow. So I will be back at 11 a.m., and we will see where the story takes us. Have a good night.